Donald creates the fumble. Goff goes crashing into the end zone.
It is intercepted by Jalen Ramsey.
Robert Wood, touchdown, LA!
Picked off by John Johnson.
Caught, touchdown, Tyler Higbee. It's Michael Brockers who gets there.
Ashawn Robinson.
Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air.
Taylor Rapp, who had one taken away, will take this into the end zone.
Henderson with a good run and a first down, still on his feet.
Safety in the arms of Leonard Floyd.
Up top, touchdown, Van Jefferson.
Terrell Lewis.
Everett in stride. Wow!
Hit behind the line, Terrell Burgess, 26.
At the goal line and in for his second touchdown. Malcolm Brown into the end zone.
Abu Khan with the strip sack.
Picked off by Troy Hill.
Akers with a stiff arm. Akers into the end zone. Cam Akers.
LA will play for the Lombardi.
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. This is basically a pre-recorded live stream, so I just wanted to share this with you guys because if you missed it, I went on Facebook Live, I went on Periscope, and I went on Twitch, and I just basically talked about the Rams roster cuts on Saturday. So if you're interested in watching those, you can find those on our Facebook, our Twitter, and our Twitch, all Downtown Rams. But if you want to listen and just to the audio, that is why I put this little thing together. This is technically episode 308 of our show. Alexis Kraft is still out of town, so I'm taking over the reins temporarily, and hope you guys enjoy. All right, guys. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We're doing a Facebook Live, Periscope Live. We're on Twitch. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. You know, apparently I also have it on my phone going on, so sorry about that. It's always kind of weird hearing yourself. So we're on Twitch, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter /Periscope. If you like us and you have yet to follow us, subscribe to us, what have you, go do that right now. If you like what we do, be sure to subscribe, and of course follow and share with anybody that may be interested. It's been a while since I've been on here. The Rams have done a lot since I've been on here. I'm going to be on here a lot more during the year. I'm excited to talk about everything that's going on, and the fact of the matter is we have so much to talk about. So I'm really looking forward to it. The Rams, as you guys probably know, they cut their roster down to 52 today. A little bit of a surprise, but not really a surprise when you think about the fact they only kept three inside linebackers on the roster. It seems like some moves are brewing, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through each position group. I'm going to break down each position group, what I thought on it, made some predictions. I thought they went over pretty well. At the end of the day, there were some cuts I didn't see happening. There were some guys making the roster I didn't see making the roster, like Banks. Congratulations to him. Tristan Jackson, congratulations to him. But we will get to that. We're going to talk about all of that. And on top of that, I will give you my list of guys that I'm looking at for the Rams as we move forward past this cut day into more of the construction of the practice squads. And, of course, what to make of that extra spot on the 53-man roster that could turn into 2 extra spots after today's news that Terrell Lewis is likely not going to play against the Cowboys. We don't know where that's going to go. We don't know the injury. We don't know the status or anything like that. But I'll tell you right now, Terrell Lewis, there's a potential that he doesn't play. And, we'll have more on Wednesday, as McVay said, but that's not exactly, great news. That's not something I want to hear, for instance. But, we'll get right into it. The quarterbacks, it wasn't a surprise to me. So, obviously, you have your franchise quarterback, Jared Goff. You have John Wolford, last year's preseason darling. John Wolford was very impressive last year in preseason, so I was not surprised They decided not to sign anybody like Blake Bortles or like any veterans or anything like that. They didn't draft anyone. They stuck in-house. John Wolford, go back and watch the film if you don't know who he is. He was doing everything that you saw in preseason. He was doing it at Wake Forest, and he was doing it effectively. I don't know how he went undrafted, but he did, probably because of size concerns, which he's kind of stomped into the ground at this point. So John Wolford gets the backup gig, and that means, as the Rams did cut Josh Love earlier in the offseason, Bryce Perkins was the third guy remaining. He was cut as well. Perkins, as you guys know, if you follow DTR, Perkins, of course, was on our podcast, so we were really happy to talk to him. Big fan of his game, and at the end of the day, we were really hoping he'd make the roster. But at the end of the day, you have to think about what he does and what he brings to the table, and the fact that Sean McVay does want him back on the practice squad. Now, it's important to keep in mind, while there's 16 guys on a practice squad this year, that's not just for the Rams. That's for the rest of the league. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's, you'll see teams that make decisions that maybe they wouldn't have made a year or so ago. But now, because you have those extra 6 spots, now you go in and you bring in a Bryce Perkins that maybe you wouldn't have in the past. He has to make it through waivers, so that's an issue. He's not guaranteed to make it through waivers, no matter what anyone tells you. It's not a guarantee. So we will see on that front. Personally, I do think he'll make it onto the practice squad. I think the Rams will use one of their 4 protections, and they will protect him. Trent, I see you over there with the stoked to see Polite made the cut. I totally agree with you over on Facebook. Holden, how's it going, my buddy? Let's see here. Difficult. They believe they don't have the answer for Terrell. Getting results from an MRI is difficult too. Okay. What happened to the other quarterback? Josh Love, he was cut early on. Bryce Perkins is the one I'm talking about now, out of Virginia, the UDFA. I will say, when he came on our show, he explained that, they liked him throughout the process. They met with him. They had a FaceTime call with him. They went over the film with him. They like Bryce Perkins. So when McVay says he wants to bring him back on the practice squad, I believe him. So that's that on the quarterbacks. If the Rams don't bring back Bryce Perkins, I'll say this right now, there are some guys that I'm interested in for certain at the quarterback position. I kind of wrote a list down here. Josh Rosen, who was cut by the Dolphins. I'm inclined to believe Josh Rosen is a lot better than people give him credit for. I think when you look at the potential, obviously that's there. We know what he can do based on what we've seen in limited reps, but then obviously what you saw at UCLA. I'd make the argument he just has been put in a rough situation both times. Let's not give the Cardinals and Dolphins any credit. They haven't exactly built these great franchises over the last few years. So it's not all Josh Rosen's fault. And I think at the end of the day, if you can't bring back a Bryce Perkins, Josh Rosen is a very good consolation prize if he goes through waivers. That's somebody you can develop long term. Another guy, Jake Dolagala, from the Bengals. I was surprised they didn't keep him. He's an interesting one to me. He's got a big arm. He's from a D2 school, I believe. He is an interesting one there. Might throw him on the practice squad. Again, this is all if the Rams can't bring back Perkins. I would prefer Perkins based on the fact that, he has that mobility. He's able to work off schedule. He reminds me very similar to a Donovan McNabb. I really like his ability overall. So I would prefer Perkins, but if all else fails, they have a list of guys here. Brett Ripien, from the Broncos. As you guys probably know, if you follow DTR for a while, I was a huge fan of his coming out of Boise State. I still think he can play in this league. I also think another guy that I've been a huge fan of, Kyle Sloter, can play in this league. And on top of that, I really like David Blau, who the Lions cut. And if you remember that name, you probably remember it from last year. His valiant effort, all to no avail, but his valiant effort, and he was very impressive in last year's Thanksgiving game for the Lions. I do really like Blau. He's a guy that I would, keep in mind if Perkins doesn't come back. And also Josh Love, because at the end of the day, I think the Rams did like Josh Love. I think Perkins' mobility beat him out as far as being the third guy. Love has pinpoint accuracy. I do like Josh Love. I did not see him, overcoming what was there with Perkins and Wolford and their abilities to work off schedule. So I'm going to take a look at your comments. We'll talk a little bit about those. I'll move on to the running backs. We're just going to do this. We're going to go each position, try to give you guys the best coverage I can, because it's a big day. We've been waiting for cuts. We've been waiting for football season. I'm going to make the most of this, and I know you guys have been waiting for me to get on here more consistently. So, that's what I'll be doing. But what's up, Michael E. King? That's my guy there, as well as Holding Cantor earlier. Let's see. Any word on linebacker veteran signing? So nothing as of yet. We will get more into that as we move along. But eventually, I'm hoping the Rams leaving 52 spots. You have to look at a guy like Todd Davis, who was just cut by the Denver Broncos. He's a 6-year starter. Or a 4-year starter. He's been in the league for 6 years. He has experience with Wade Phillips' scheme, but let's not forget he also was coached by Brandon Staley in that Vic Fangio scheme. So he'd be able to start, in my opinion, day one. He has, the idea of what's going on as far as that defense is concerned. And they only kept 3 inside linebackers. So, to me, that speaks volume. I don't think they're going to go out and get just anybody. I think it's going to be a veteran inside linebacker. And Todd Davis seems like a good answer on that front. Josh Rosen, there you go. Jacob. Lots of tight end Everett rumors. Yes, from what I saw, Michael, is that that Gerald Everett was, he was called about, and the Rams were basically saying no to Gerald Everett trades. Would have to imagine he's either going to be brought back at the end of the year, which I think is a little unlikely. I think more so the Rams are going to try to pump up that stock, and then he's going to get a fat contract in the offseason. The Rams are going to end up with a 4th-round compensatory pick. I agree. I believe Sean McVay would be good for Rosen. Would agree with that as well. I do think Rosen needs a quarterback whisperer like McVay. Really hope Johnston makes through waivers. I think he will. Ultimately, Clay Johnston's a guy, he's coming off a major knee injury 8 months ago. I look at him as somebody that they felt they were going to, redshirt this year. Likely, maybe play a little special teams, but I didn't see him being an active player during the year. I think he would have been an inactive player the majority of the season. This is an opportunity for Johnston. He is not ready necessarily with that knee. I don't think it's really hard to come back from a knee injury that quickly. So, it gives him an opportunity if he can get into a practice squad like the Rams, if he stays in-house. He's got a coach he loves, I can tell you that much. He's told me straight up he really likes Joe Barry. I'd like that opportunity for him. It's fine. If he didn't make it, it's totally fine. A lot of these guys, it takes a little bit longer. I'll tell you right now, 2018 Clay Johnston is probably a 5th, 6th round pick. So, the knee injury really hurt him, and he's going to have to bounce back from that, but I think he will, and I think, ultimately he'll fall into the Rams' lap, and it won't be like Dakota Allen. He will, be added to the practice squad. Keep in mind, guys, there's not a lot of film on these guys, so if you have a team that fell in love with these guys during the pre-draft process, sure, that will be your competitor, but there's no such thing as, well, we saw the preseason tape, and this guy all of a sudden really popped our eye out, because, well, there's no preseason tape, there's no preseason. That actually bodes well for the Rams in that regard, and other teams for that matter. Rosen needs a coach like McVay to grow. I think he'll be a solid backup choice. I agree with that. I don't think Rosen's necessary if you bring Perkins back. I'm just saying, if Perkins doesn't come back, I'd like Josh Rosen for sure. Where's the biggest weakness on the defense this year? That's where I'm most worried. Inside linebacker for sure. And I think they're going to play, as Jordan Rodrigue of The Athletic has pointed out multiple times, I think they're going to mask their issues with the inside linebacker group by playing a lot of nickel. I really like Tremaine Ankrum. He came on our show. Obviously, I think, his film speaks for itself. He played in some big-time games, in severe spots for Clemson. He went up against the best of the best, and he proved himself. And, I think that goes a long way. Yeah, Holden, shout out to Tristan Jackson and Eric Banks. I did not expect Eric Banks to make it. That is really impressive. No one mentioned his name. The fact he made it, I think it's really cool for him. I didn't think Tristan Jackson would beat out Ernest either. But I think at the end of the day, Ernest probably goes back on the practice squad. So we'll see. I was surprised about Tristan Jackson. But moving on, we'll start with, we'll just go position by position. I'll answer questions in between and what have you. But running backs. So you had the obvious, Malcolm Brown. He's going to start week 1. Cam Akers, the second-round pick out of Florida State. Last year's third-round pick in Darrell Henderson out of Memphis. And then you had John Kelly from Tennessee. He was cut yesterday. He's been on the roster. Was a 6th-round pick in 2018. And then this year, and I'll say this, guys, and Michael knows this very well. I've been really high on him. I call him X-Man. His name is Xavier Jones. He's not the first running back to come out of SMU and go to the Rams. And I don't think he'll be the last either. But Xavier Jones is a talent. Xavier Jones is the definition of what happens when you have a very, very shortened pre-draft process because of everything that happened, unprecedented, not invited to the combine, no Senior Bowl, and you don't have an opportunity to really put yourself out there and expose yourself to the rest of the scouting community and teams. If Xavier Jones had a scouting combine invite or things along that nature, he's a 5th-round pick. He's a talented football player, and he proved that by making this 53-man roster. So by holding on to him, I'm not shocked at all. I think that was the right move. I think he offers more than Kelly does. He's got a lot of pop behind his pads, as somebody that can work in pass pro. But I love his ability. He can stop and start on a dime. He can make, catches out of the backfield. His vision, I'm really impressed with him overall. And obviously that long speed, he can take it to the house. He's an interesting one. He's similar to like the guys in the past the Rams have kept, like a Trey Watts. But I think he is better than Trey Watts. I think he's better than John Kelly. And I had him making the roster. That didn't surprise me at all. So, I think Jones, as soon as I saw the Rams cut James Gilbert out of Kansas State for Xavier Jones and keep Jones, I knew Jones was going to make the roster. I mean, he just brings so much to the table. He's a true running back. I mean, other teams would have picked him up. He would not have cleared waivers. There's no way. So that's my thoughts on the running back. Not a whole lot to talk about. I don't see them going out and getting anybody. They'll probably stick John Kelly on the practice squad because now they have 16 spots. But at the end of the day, running back is fine. I think it's one of the better running back groups in the league. It's a little bit unproven, but when you look at pure talent, this is one of the best running back groups in the league. Moving on, though, wide receivers. So we all know, the first 5 were a lock because of everything we've been seeing with Nasimba Webster. And then obviously Van Jefferson and Josh Reynolds and Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. We did not see Tristan Jackson making the roster, although at least I did not, and most people did not. I'm not going to say no one out there, didn't call it. I'm sure a Syracuse Rams fan was pretty happy when Syracuse UDFA wide receiver Tristan Jackson made the Rams roster. Here's the thing about Jackson. He's a bigger receiver. He's going to go up and high point the football, so he's a little different than most that they have on the roster. He was a 1,000-yard receiver at Syracuse. He's a former Michigan State receiver that transferred to Syracuse, wasn't really getting an opportunity at Michigan State. So I like this kid a lot. I was surprised they kept him. I thought they would just keep 5. But I think this is a good move. If they see something in him, and I'm sorry, but Josh Reynolds and Cooper Kupp both in a contract year, don't sleep on Tristan Jackson. If they like him this much to keep him on a roster that only has 3 inside linebackers right now, I mean, there's a good chance he's going to be fighting for a legitimate role next year if the Rams, lose Reynolds and Kupp. So, I mean, that's something to keep in mind. I don't take that lightly. And especially the fact is, he had to earn it. I mean, all these guys, any UDFA that makes a 53-man roster this year really earned it because they did it without preseason. That is hard to do. There are guys that have had monstrous preseasons and still been cut. So it says a lot. And it says a lot coming from an offensive-minded coach in Sean McVay. So I'm looking forward to the Tristan Jackson, seeing where he goes, his development. At the end of the day, I mean, again, I was surprised, but it doesn't mean he isn't worthy. 6'1", 191. I like his ability, again, to high point the football, go up and get it. And I know Syracuse is going to miss him. So it's a good move for the Rams. If they like it, I'm here for it. And now I'm going to kind of go through here, and let's see. Eric Banks was the first guy I thought would get cut. Yeah, Trent, I agree with you. I thought Eric Banks would get cut as well. But I'm happy for him, coming from a small school. I mean, anytime you're able to do that, that's impressive, Texas, San Antonio. So let's see here. John Kelly. Well, yeah, I agree with you, Trent. John Kelly had 3 years, and, we pretty much found out everything we were going to know. And this is not to, dismay John Kelly, but, at the end of the year, at the end of the day, the Rams went out and got C.J. Anderson, and when they had John Kelly and Justin Davis. They knew he wasn't ready, and they drafted a second round and a third round running back. The writing was on the wall. I mean, he just never was really able to do anything. I don't even think he's bad either. Like, I think he can play in this league. But the Rams just have better options. Kelly would not want to be put on the Rams practice squad. I can tell you that much. I think he'd rather just go out and try to win a job, because I just don't see, there's not upside here besides the coaching, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Ashawn Robinson absence will hurt us with subpar inside linebackers. Totally agree with you, Michael, and we've talked about this before. Ashawn Robinson was the thing that made this Rams team feel different. They finally had a true nose tackle, and one in 2018 that was considered elite by all accounts. And I think that really just took the wind out of a lot of people's sails that were really looking forward to seeing him play. Robinson is a monster. So to not have him, and we don't know how long the Rams won't have him, but that's going to hurt. Especially, again, subpar inside linebackers. And we won't go into how much I disagreed with letting Corey Littleton go. I've pretty much made that clear to everyone that talks football with me. What's up, Clash? How we doing? I hope Ernest Edwards comes back as well. I saw his film at Maine, and obviously then I talked to the guy, and, it just seems like a really nice guy, and seems, honestly, I saw his route tapes he put on his, Instagram story, and I'm not going to lie, he looks pretty good. I mean, he's not just a special team guy like everyone just assumes. I mean, he can run routes, and just go back to his film at Maine. I mean, he showed that. Let's see. How you feel about Ja'Kai Polite? He's one of my favorites. So, I mean, I love Ja'Kai Polite. Absolutely love him. And I'm so glad he made the roster. I'm hoping he gets a legitimate opportunity with Terrell Lewis out, because I think he's got one of the quickest first steps. I think he has the quickest first step besides Aaron Donald on the team right now as it stands. So, I mean, I'm all for him. I don't care, and I said this on the podcast, I don't know if you guys heard, but I said it on the podcast, I don't care how well this guy did at his pro day, in shorts and a t-shirt. I don't care, how poorly he did. Because at the end of the day, he's been around Aaron Donald, Michael Brockers, these true pros. Henderson is the defensive lines coach. He's worked with quality coaches. He's been in the building with guys like Donald and Brockers. And we haven't heard a peep out of, his off-the-field stuff, which it's funny how that kept showing up with the Jets, and I question the way the Jets are managed, because they somehow ran a safety, an all-pro safety out of town, a franchise safety, and some other guys, and obviously their head coach is a little out there. And then the Seahawks released him from the practice squad, but we never heard anything about off-the-field stuff. So he's been squeaky clean with the Rams, and he made the roster, and I think he's going to have a significant role. Number 95. Watch out for that. Yeah, Steven, so the surprise on defense... Oh, yes, Michael Polite made the team. The surprise on defense has to be Banks. I did not have Banks making the roster. He's 6'5". He's listed as 230? That has to be a typo. He doesn't look like 230. But 6'5", 230 at defensive line... I need to look that up because on the Rams site I'm looking at, and it's 230 pounds. So I'm going to do that right now because, I mean, that's ridiculous. I don't think he's 230 pounds. Okay, he's probably around the 270 pound mark. NFLDraftScout.com has him at. Okay, that's probably where we're at. He's probably kind of built like a Morgan Fox. There's no way he's 230 pounds. And I know the Rams site says that. I'm not trusting that. There's just no way. Yeah, so we talked about the wide receivers. And we also we discussed the running backs. We discussed the quarterbacks. Tight ends. So, yeah, I agree with you, Trent. That it is stranger when you consider the Rams thought he wouldn't clear waivers. Banks must have really showed out. I don't know, but nothing on the Terrell Lewis injury at the moment. Just that he won't play for the Cowboys game, and we'll have more on Wednesday. With that being said, the tight ends. So you start out. You had Higbee, Everett, Johnny Munt. You had the fourth rounder that I absolutely love in Bryson Hopkins. You had the UDFA from last year out of Mizzou in Kendall Blanton. He was let go yesterday. I think he's going to be on the practice squad. I think they like him. There's a reason he stuck around as long as he has. And then the Rams kept the rest of them. I like this, and here's why. Higbee, if Higbee is anything like he was at the end of last year, if he brings that same effort and that same production into this season, the Rams' offense is going to be scary. On top of that, Gerald Everett got hurt towards the end of last year as well. If he can play anything like he played against the Kansas City Chiefs, I know we always bring up that game, but that really showcased who Gerald Everett can be, or what he can be. Again, if he's able to play like that, that's going to be scary. Johnny Munt, he's the most ironic player because Johnny Munt was a great athlete at Oregon who was supposed to be a really good receiving tight end who ended up getting, I believe, 2 knee injuries. He had 2 ACL tears, I believe. And now he's a blocking tight end. He's a specialist, basically. He made the roster. It's just so bizarre because I remember him being a very good receiving tight end. But now he's a blocking tight end in the NFL, and he has a role. And he went from, he came out of nowhere. I had him making the roster the year he made it, but it still was a little bit of a surprise, and I was kind of throwing a shot in the dark there. And now he's like a lock. And then you have Bryson Hopkins, who, I can't stress this enough, shouldn't have been there in the 4th round. He was my number 1 tight end in the draft. He is a freakish talent, in my opinion. He should have gone in the 2nd round, maybe even early 1st. I'm super high on the guy. I really am. Long term, he is going to be huge for the Rams. Don't forget that, out of Purdue. He is going to be very, very good. So I like the Rams tight ends. The offensive line is a little interesting to me because, well, we'll start off with the tackles. So we have Andrew Whitworth, Rob Havenstein, Bobby Evans, and David Edwards. Those are the tackles as the Rams website lists them. Yes, they list David Edwards as a tackle. And then they have 2 safeties on the roster. They kept Brian Allen and Coleman Shelton. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't feel like Brian Allen is big enough up front. And I don't think Coleman Shelton is big enough up front. They're both, 303 or below. Shelton's 299 in weight. It is a bummer. Chandler Brewer had to opt out due to COVID concerns. I understand it entirely. I'm not, being against it. I'm just saying I think the guy 100% would have made the roster. He was definitely an intriguing talent that I was, looking forward to seeing more of. And then as far as that goes with the rest of the offensive line, you have Joseph Noteboom, you have Austin Corbett, Austin Blythe. So my thoughts on this pretty much went the way I expected, except I thought that they would have cut Shelton and Allen. And I kind of feel like they should have. The thing is, I like their starters. and I've been saying this for a while. I know people are like draft an offensive lineman. Like, you need to do it now. Like, why are you drafting this guy? Why did we take Van Jefferson? We should have gotten insert line, offensive lineman here. I'm higher on the offensive line than the majority. My issue is that their center position, I felt like there were guys that were released today from other teams that would have been better to add to the roster than a Brian Allen, who hasn't shown really anything, and he's coming off an injury, and Coleman Shelton, who I don't really understand. But then again, this is Aaron Kromer. I'm not going to disagree with the decisions that he's made. I will say I was kind of looking forward to seeing, Cole Cabral, climb his way onto the roster. That didn't happen. But all in all, I think, you start out, it's going to be probably Whitworth, Noteboom, Blythe, Corbett, and Havenstein as your starting five, with Evans and Edwards as your next two up, and then Ankrum. And I don't think I said Ankrum, but Ankrum made the team. I mean, I totally missed that. Yeah, I didn't say Ankrum for some reason, but Ankrum made the team. So, yeah, those are going to be your top 8, and then the other two centers, which who hopefully won't be needed. Here's the reason why I wasn't a huge fan of keeping any of the centers, except for maybe Cabral, is because everyone forgot that while, Austin Blythe is playing center, Austin Corbett has also played center. So you had two guys that could play center. And you have all this depth and, these guys that can be mix and matched wherever. I mean, Ankrum was playing tackle the other day. I mean, I didn't really see the point of keeping those guys. I don't think that they're part of the best 53 out of the 80-man roster by any stretch. I think it would have been better to keep Perkins over keeping Allen or Coleman Shelton. I think it would have been better to keep a lot of guys over there. I don't think that they're that great, personally. But I get it. I guess if they really wanted to keep that in-house depth at the center position, fine. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that. Moving on, though, the Rams with their defensive line, a little surprising that they let go of Marquise Copeland. He was getting first-team reps, so I was a little surprised by that. But you have Morgan Fox, you have Eric Banks, Michael Brockers, and then you have Aaron Donald, and Sebastian Joseph Day. So I am definitely surprised that Eric Banks made it. I don't. It's not that he shouldn't have, but again, that's definitely a shocker to me. I wasn't expecting that per se. Oh, and Greg Gaines. Can't forget about Greg Gaines. So, now here's the thing with this defensive line, you're probably looking at Aaron Donald, Sebastian Joseph Day, and Michael Brockers being your starters. Ashawn Robinson was put on non-football injury list, so he has to sit out. He can't play football for, I believe, 6 weeks it is, and then he can be reactivated. So that's the tough thing about that. As far as that goes, your rotation is going to basically be, at this point, Morgan Fox, Eric Banks, and Greg Gaines. So Greg Gaines, I would imagine, would be your fill-in nose tackle, and then Eric Banks and Fox can be interchangeable. They can play either of those positions and take over for Brockers and Donald. Still a little confusing though. Again, with the Banks thing, I'm hoping he ends up being this diamond in the rough type of guy, but I was a little surprised by that. Now I'm gonna check. I'm gonna take a look at your comments. Try to keep up with this as much as I can. If I miss any of yours, I apologize. I'm just kind of going through using this Restream app and trying to respond to everybody. Hopefully everybody has theirs coming up. If I'm missing anybody, I apologize again. Let's see. Brian Allen and Shelton suck. We are doomed if that's our center choices, says Clash. Yeah, I won't say they suck. I don't think that's fair for me to say, but I don't prefer them. We'll say that. Any word on signings being targeted? Todd, there's no word on really anything along that line, and here's why. These guys are being cut, right now, or they've already been cut. We have to wait for the process to go through. The Rams really any team for that matter, will never say that they're claiming somebody before they claim them, because that lets everybody know. They have the 20th position in the waiver order, which seems ridiculous. It seems like, all these other teams that are ahead of them have been claiming consistently, but whatever. So they're not exactly first, so they can't just kind of be like, yeah, we're gonna claim Josh Rosen, and then 19 other teams know that they're claiming Josh Rosen, so they're like, no, you're not. So that's how that works. As far as free agents, like Todd Davis, you could actually hear about. If the Rams were interested in Todd Davis, he's a free agent. He doesn't have to go through the waiver process. He's been in the league for 6 years. So, that could be an interesting one. I agree, Michael. Rams O-line depth is underrated. Let's see. Clash, Whitworth, Corbett, Blythe, Edwards, and Havenstein. Evans fight it out for that right tackle spot. Yeah, I mean, I'm not in love with the way Havenstein's been playing lately, but I think he'll start, and I do agree that they could fight that out. A fourth center in Shelton is unnecessary with Blythe, Corbett, and Allen. I agree, and maybe they don't view Corbett as a center. I mean, I would, but he has experience there. Corbett is very versatile. He can even play tackle, but I mean, he's just not great at tackle. I saw him at the Senior Bowl play every position. I know he can do it. He's just not going to be a great tackle. He could be a great guard. Keep in mind, this is a second-round pick. He was 33rd overall. The Browns just kind of gave up on him. The Rams got a legit player in Corbett. That was a fantastic trade by Les Snead. I've said that repeatedly. He just, he can't play tackle like that well. He could play it, but it'd be like very serviceable at best. Can we please start Greg Gaines over SJD at nose? I don't know how I feel about that. I've actually kind of, warmed up a little bit to SJD. But, I mean, again, I really like Greg Gaines, and I want to see him get opportunities. So, I mean, can we just start playing Greg Gaines? Yes, I mean, I agree with that. I really want to see what Obo can do this season. Been waiting too long. Yeah, David, I do want to see Okoronkwo as well. I had a second-round grade on him. I really wanted the Rams to grab him. When they grabbed him, I was stoked, but I was confused why he fell all the way to the late fifth. I think he's somebody that can definitely make an impact if given an opportunity. I'm higher on Ja'Kai Polite, though. I think Ja'Kai Polite has more potential than anybody on the Rams as far as pass rushers are concerned, besides Terrell Lewis. The thing about Terrell Lewis that worries me is that Terrell Lewis has those injury issues. Ja'Kai Polite doesn't have that. So I think Ja'Kai Polite's overall potential is higher than any edge defender if you weigh in, the health risks. I think Roseboom will make the practice squad. I was shocked they cut him. It looked to me like he was going to make the roster, so we'll see. I do agree SJD is a better 5 technique, but they don't really have a true nose tackle except for Robinson. So we're subject because he's not going to be able to play, but yeah, I agree with you. And Nashres Patrick, that was surprising as well because he offers flexibility as an inside backer as well. He's played he's played inside, he's played outside, so I'm a little surprised by that cut. But we'll move right into the edge defenders and the outside linebackers. I call them edge because some of them whatever. Leonard Floyd obviously made the team. Sam Sebukam, Terrell Lewis, Obanai Okoronkwo, and Ja'Kai Polite. So those are your edge defenders. Morgan Fox is listed as a defensive end, so I mean, I guess you could call him that. Justin Lawler was cut. He was waived injured, so he'll probably revert back to the IR. They like Lawler, and they kept him around. He was out for the whole year last year, and they kept him around again. It looks like they're going to keep him around again this year. Yeah, I think that group, obviously you can see why they were trying to, claim a guy like Curtis Weaver when he went down with that injury. They did submit a claim. It was failed, because the Browns got him. But I think if they're interested in going out and getting Curtis Weaver, I'll tell you right now, Chad Thomas from that same team, the Browns, he was just cut today. Former 5th-round pick out of Miami, could be an interesting option there. Justin Hollins from the Broncos, not to connect everybody to the Broncos, but I'm going to give you 2 Broncos edge defenders. Justin Hollins from Oregon and Derek Tuska from North Dakota State. I think those 2 from the Broncos would make a lot of sense. Tuska doesn't have any sort of connection to Brandon Staley. He's just a guy that I really liked, and they drafted in the 7th round. He was, I believe, in my top 10 edge defenders this year in the draft. But Justin Hollins, he's an intriguing one. He came on our show. He also won the Shrine Bowl MVP during his pre-draft season in 2019. He was drafted in 2019, so he had 1 year to play with Brandon Staley and play in that Fangio scheme. Another 5th rounder. I think he'd be really intriguing. So those are 3 edge defenders that I have the Rams, potentially going after. They don't have to go after any of them. I think Justin Hollins would be the best fit. But those are just some names to throw out at you. Another thing, I didn't mention when we were talking about offensive line, so I'm going to go back real quick. Alex Taylor is somebody I really, really, really like. Now, Taylor, he's got this crazy 6'8", 320 frame, 320 body. He's got really long arms. He's very raw. The Browns cut him. If the Rams could grab a hold of him and just let Cromer do his magic, I think he could become something. Ross Pierschbaker, formerly the center for the Alabama Crimson Tide, I think he'd be interesting. The Redskins let him go. He also came on our show. But Pierschbaker, I think, would make a lot of sense. I would take him over Allen or Coleman Shelton, personally. I think he has a better body for it. I don't really like getting a center that can get pushed back pretty easily. I like bigger centers, so those are some guys. I also didn't mention when we were talking about receiver, Hakeem Butler, who was released 4th rounder. He was my wide receiver 2 last year in the draft, out of Iowa State for the Cardinals. They cut him. If the Rams were looking to grab a receiver, that was who I would go after. But now we move on to the position that everybody's talking about, or everybody wants to talk about, or everyone has to talk about, and that is the inside linebacker group. Here's the thing. The Rams have 3 inside linebackers on the roster right now. The Rams let Corey Littleton go in free agency. So entirely, they have 0 NFL starts out of their true number 1 starter in Micah Kiser. He's never started an NFL game before. They have 8 out of Troy Reeder, who is a UDFA out of Delaware, transferred from Penn State. He gave him everything he could, but again, he is a solid starter, we'll say. He has a long way to go. He's not a, all-world type of talent. And the same can be said for Kenny Young out of UCLA, who came to the Rams in that trade. Marcus Peters goes to the Ravens. The Rams get Kenny Young. Young didn't really play at all much of last year. He has started 6 games in his career. He has played in a lot of games, but as far as starts, he only has 6. So they don't have a lot of experience, and they have 1 additional spot on the roster. We'll see if anybody else gets cut. But I'd have to imagine the Rams are going to go for experience here, go after a guy like Todd Davis. The Rams let go of Christian Roseboom from South Dakota State. The Rams let go of Clay Johnston, 7th rounder of Baylor. We already mentioned that earlier. And, the Rams let go of 2 guys yesterday in Derek Moncrief, originally from Oklahoma State. He was a safety, strong safety, went to the CFL, and then he transferred to linebacker. Athletic build, could be a practice squad guy, we'll see. And then another guy, a big guy that was mentioned on Hard Knocks, Daniel Batuli out of Tennessee, 6'4", 250. He was giving him kind of the beef in the middle. He does not make the roster. So all these guys were let go. And that leaves only 3 inside linebackers, not to mention letting go of Nitrez Patrick was a pretty big shock to me. I'm sure a lot of you were shocked as well, because he also has that experience to play inside backer. So they really only truly have 3 inside linebackers on the roster. I'd be shocked if they go into the first game of the year with 4, but maybe they will. I think they would go with 5, but we'll see on that front. As far as that goes, there are some interesting names that were dropped today. One being a guy that they met with, Shaquem Griffin. I think it was 2 years ago for the draft. He made the Seahawks roster last year with his brother, his twin brother, Shaq Griffin. Shaquem Griffin is the one-handed football player that's extremely talented. He ran a 4.3 Just unbelievable athleticism as a linebacker, but obviously you have the concerns. It's harder to play football with one hand, and he's done an incredible job throughout his entire career. It's a shame to see him get cut, but at the same time, maybe the Rams pick him up. He'd be a pretty good option. Again, very athletic. Just go back and watch his film at UCF. I mean, he's not a slouch. So I think that'd be an interesting option there. Todd Davis, I've mentioned repeatedly, from the Broncos. Not a big linebacker and not a fast linebacker like Hakeem, but what he does very well is he's very instinctive, he's very smart, and he's a well-liked leader. He's a 2-time or maybe 3-time captain, I believe, from his days with the Broncos. Has experience with not only Wade Phillips, but Brandon Staley, so that familiarity will help. And then Voshon Joseph is a linebacker, 5th-round linebacker out of Florida. Bills drafted him. The Rams actually met with him, so they have had contact with him before. We'll see if they're interested in a developmental guy like that. And then Andre Smith with the Bills. But I think if they're looking for experience, Todd Davis has to be the guy. The other guys out there, Michael Kendricks, as you know, he has the legal issues with his insider trading. I don't think he's going to go to prison, guys, but I don't necessarily think that they can sign a guy like that until his hearing in October is, taken care of. And then Nigel Bradham from the Eagles, who I think Nigel Bradham would make sense as well. He's 31 years old. He'd be another veteran guy. Personally, Todd Davis, though, I think would make a lot of sense. So moving on, we have the cornerbacks. Now, on the roster, cornerbacks are listed as such. There's 4 cornerbacks on the roster. The Rams surprisingly cut Dante Dion, and they cut Adonis Alexander yesterday. Alexander is a former supplemental draft pick that I really liked out of Virginia Tech. He's a 6'3", kind of built like Richard Sherman, like body type. He's just way too raw, and the Rams are going to have to try to develop him. If they want to, they're going to have to try to develop him on the practice squad. He is not a guy that I count on in a late game situation or anything like that. But luckily, the Rams have Jalen Ramsey, who in my opinion, pound for pound, is the best corner in the NFL. They have Troy Hill, who is actually, I believe, going into a contract year, but Troy Hill has been really good as of late, and he's going to start. Darius Williams, the last quarter of the season last year, Darius Williams is a guy the Rams stole from the Ravens. They stole him right away when the Ravens dropped him to add Jimmy Smith to their roster. They were trying to add him to the practice squad. Darius Williams out of UAB, people do not realize how good this kid could be. And the Rams do know this. The last quarter of the year, he was rated the second highest. Actually, he was rated the highest cornerback by Pro Football Focus. Second highest was Jalen Ramsey. So you'd have to imagine he's going to get an opportunity, as well as 3rd-round pick out of Michigan, David Long Jr. So I really like the way the cornerbacks look. I was a little shocked Dante Dion was cut. I thought he would make it. I thought he was a lock, but I think he'll likely go on the practice squad. Although, being on Hard Knocks, we haven't had a chance to see a ton, but Dante Dion has been featured. Teams know who he is. The Giants had him. The Giants need some corners. I wouldn't be surprised if he, gets claimed in waivers. The thing that'll help him is he is a nickel corner, and he's shorter and he's smaller. He's not like a physical freak, so that will help him. As far as cornerbacks go, I think that they have 4, but they're probably going to kind of classify Terrell Burgess as a safety / cornerback. So we'll see where that goes, but I think maybe that's how they kind of justified cutting Dante Dion, because they feel like he can play nickel and safety. Burgess anyway. Moving on. Well, actually, we're gonna stop there. We're gonna talk a little bit about the corners, and I'm not saying the Rams 100% have to, go after some some corners. But what I will say is that there are some interesting ones that were let go today. One that includes Rasul Douglas, who is a former day 2 pick out of West Virginia, who's a former starter for the Eagles. Rasul Douglas could be an interesting option. Steven Denmark, he's somebody I've spoken with before, 6'4" out of Valdosta State. He was on the Bears practice squad, I believe, last season. Another project guy, and I think Steven Denmark makes a lot of sense if you want to go and you want to grab Adonis Alexander, but you don't like how old he is. You don't like the fact that he's, not a 21-year-old 6'3" guy. So developmental guy Steven Denmark makes sense, and then Michael Jackson out of Miami, he was cut by the Patriots. I definitely wouldn't mind, adding him to a practice squad or adding him to the roster. So that's kind of, the way I see that with those for the corners. Moving on to the safeties. I mean, I think you guys know the Rams have one of the best safety groups in the NFL. John Johnson III, he is a top 12 safety in the league, top 10, around that. Taylor Rapp is going to be very important when, running nickel. Taylor Rapp is going to be kind of that pseudo linebacker, I believe. The Rams are going to run a lot of 3 safety sets, and the thing is, at the end of the day, when you have those 2 guys and then you add 2 guys in the draft that can contribute right away, we've already seen it all with Terrell Burgess at Utah, right? But what we didn't know is that Jordan Fuller, well, I'll say this, I didn't know, some of you guys did. Michael E. King gets the biggest shout out I could give, because he was telling me from the get-go, he's like, I think this Jordan Fuller kid is going to be very, very good. And, I was just like, I don't know. I mean, I was wrong about John Johnson. I wasn't high on him. I wanted Desmond King, and Desmond King ended up being pretty damn good. But Michael just kept telling me over and over again, he's like, look out for this Fuller kid. Like, he's not just, he's not competing just against Nick Scott. He's not just a practice squad or a special teams guy. He's like, he can start if they need him to. And then, of course, right after he said that, it seemed like the Rams were constantly starting him in practice. And sure enough, he carved out a role on this roster. We've already seen that a draft pick can be cut. The Rams have cut draft picks before, so he wasn't a guarantee to make the roster. They've cut Sam Rodgers in the past, a 7th-round fullback out of Virginia Tech. And they just cut Clay Johnston, 7th-rounder out of Baylor. We've seen it. But the fact that they kept Fuller, it goes to show you what Fuller was able to do, because they also kept Nick Scott, who was a 7th-round pick out of Penn State. I think he's really improved. They were talking about how well he's been in the scrimmages and the practices, and he's offered value on the defensive end and not just special teams. As you know, he was a premier special teamer at Penn State. So this is a really good safety group. Really, really good. One of the best in the league, if not the best. Now, they cut a few guys. They cut Tyreek McGee, they cut Diane Lake, and they cut Juju Hughes, and Jake Gervais from Iowa. He had a few games that he actually got in last season, was called up to the roster in October. I think at least two, I'd say at least one, but 2 of those guys, if I had to put my name on it, Diane Lake, Jordan Rodrigue of The Athletic has reported that they really like him and could be a practice squad guy. They want to bring him back on the practice squad. So Diane Lake, and I believe he was the BYU kid, and Jake Gervais, who actually played on the active 53-man roster last year. Watch out for him. I think he'll be a practice squad ad as well. So that's the safeties. And I did not look at one safety that was cut today or yesterday, because at the end of the day, I really like what the Rams have at the safety position. I think they are loaded. For the first time in a long time, I think they're truly loaded. I trust Fuller to start. I trust Burgess to start. I trust Rapp. I trust Johnson. I even trust Scott. I didn't even love the Scott pick, but I think Scott is one of those guys that is a lot better player in the NFL than he was in college. It's kind of how I feel about Fuller. And I think Burgess was just a stud in college, so I can't say that about him. And same thing with Rapp and Johnson. I would probably say Johnson was a lot better in the NFL than he was in college, but he was still good in college. But all in all, I really like the secondary group that they have. So I didn't even bother, looking at safeties, that were cut. I just don't feel like the Rams would. They have so many that they just cut. They like Lake as a long-term developmental guy, and they like Gervais. I'd imagine he comes back. So I didn't bother. And then we move on to the specialists, and Johnny Hekker, for the first time in his career, I think, maybe the first time, I could be wrong, had no competition at his position. And let's be real here, guys. When they sign a punter, they're not trying to give Johnny Hekker competition. What they're trying to do is give him an opportunity to rest during preseason games. Since there were no preseason games, there's no need to get a punter. The kicker competition was very interesting. Sounds like Samuel Sloman, from Miami, Ohio. I don't know what that was blanking on me, but Miami, Ohio. He wins the job. It sounds like he won it in the final week of training camp. So, I mean, everything that we were seeing, Liram Hairulahu and Austin McGinnis seemed to be ahead of him as far as production at the scrimmages, but they like Samuel Sloman, their 7th-round pick, and we've already seen them cut Clay Johnston, a 7th-round pick, so it has nothing to do with him being a pick and them keeping a pick because they cut one already in a position of need. He just must have, really improved and showed the coaches that that's the guy they want. I'm not really a believer in long-term kicking. I'm a believer in getting the best guy right now because I don't think you can sit there and be like, yeah, we can wait for you. You're going to have your bumps in the road, but then you're going to be a star. When you're a team like the Rams that settles for a lot of field goals, I mean, these can cost you games. So I was all for, I didn't care about his age. I was all for Liram Hairulahu, all for him. I saw the ability that he had in the CFL, and I just felt like that was the guy that I wanted. That was the guy I felt comfortable with. But Samuel Sloman, something tells me that he'll prove me wrong. I've been proved wrong plenty of times. I mean, for every right thing I get, I probably get 2 or 3 things wrong. I'll admit that. For every George Kittle I get right, I get a Tamarick Hemingway wrong. It happens. I mean, we're all going to get things wrong. We're all going to get things right. But at the end of the day, you're hoping I'm not right about a Rams player being poor. I'm hoping I'm always wrong when a Rams pick comes in and I don't agree with it. That's what it comes down to. I wasn't a fan of the Sloman pick. I'll be completely honest. I'll have it go on the record. Was not a fan of picking a kicker in the 7th, despite the fact the Rams picked Greg Zuerlein in the 7th round. And, well, we know how that worked out. I would have rather had Zuerlein come back instead of picking a kicker, but that's neither here nor there. And then, of course, the long snapper, Jake McQuaid, is pretty much a lock since they didn't bring in anybody to be a long snapper. So, I think that this Rams team looks pretty good on paper. Not going to lie. I mean, Trayvon Howard being out for the year is just such a bummer. I was really looking forward to seeing him in limited opportunities in coverage. He showed up, and that's what it comes down to. Last year, he really showed up. Was really looking forward to him getting a full season. Glad Micah Kaiser didn't get hurt. We'll have an opportunity to see him finally play. Ashawn Robinson, really bummed about that, and really bummed about Terrell Lewis. But this is a next man up league. And when you look at the way everything is and how, I can't believe we're even going to have a season. Keep in mind, guys, when I went on here, I said repeatedly, I don't think we're going to have a season, but here's what I think. Now, I can't believe we're going to have a season, and this is what I think. So, thankful for that. But I think, the Rams are going to have to do some things that you haven't seen before, as are many other teams. This is a next man up league. You're only basically dialing it up a notch with the way the COVID practices are. Because at the end of the day, if anybody gets COVID, including, say, Jared Goff, Wolford is going to have to be your starting quarterback. There's no, he's questionable with COVID. Like, COVID, you get shut down for 10 days. It's going to make things very interesting. Very interesting. It's a dynamic I have not seen. Obviously, none of you guys have seen. So, we'll see with that. If anyone has any questions, let me know. If not, I appreciate you guys all, tuning in and listening to me ramble on about the Rams and working with me. I didn't see anybody log out of this live stream when my audio went down, so I appreciate that. I have no idea what happened. That's literally never happened to me once. The video's cut out before, but I've never had audio completely cut out. So I really appreciate you guys all coming on. And that's going to do it for this. This has been a Downtown Rams podcast live. You are listening to the Rams 53-man roster cut down edition of the podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. And I will be back tomorrow to give you kind of the rundown of what happens tomorrow with the roster moves. There's going to be a few, I'd imagine, so stay tuned. As always, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, and you guys take care.